Lucia Aniello, a creator of Hacks. I thought season 2 was way better than season 1, and I love season 1.
Cool.
But how did you guys approach the second season, and how much pressure did you guys feel after season 1 was such a success?
To start with your second question, we felt a lot of pressure. Not really necessarily because I think, from external sources, really. I think we just really felt like, in this industry, there's everyone's always taking shots on goal, and getting a movie made or a TV show made is like a miracle, and having something cut through is an even bigger miracle. So it felt like, oh my God, we actually have this show that people are watching and really loving, and connecting with in a way that felt really honestly special, at least for us. People saying that I'm watching it with my mom, or I'm watching it with my husband, and I watch it with friends from college. It really honestly felt like people were connecting over the show. And so I think when you have something like that, you're just we better not blow it. We just wanted to continue to make people feel the same way about it, or hopefully like it even more the way that luckily you felt. So we did feel like we really put a lot of pressure on ourselves to make a show as visually exciting, as emotional, as funny. And I think because we learned so much from making season 1 with the actors we had, and just with our crew and all that, it felt a little bit more like we could make some improvements. Jean was the only person other than Paul W. Downs, who plays Jimmy, the only people who had cast when we wrote season 1. So now we are writing season 2, knowing who we're writing for. And I think that made a huge difference.
For sure.
I forget your first question. What was it?
Oh, it was just how did you guys approach it, but you just answered it. So there you go. But one thing, I remember when I saw the log line for season 2 or whatever, and it was 8 episodes, and you guys it was 2 fewer than season 1. And we were talking about this before we started, and just cutting down. And but I think generally speaking, when the first season of a show is successful, the instinct of networks and studios is to do more season 2, more episodes. So can you talk about deciding to cut back for season 2?
Yeah. I mean, I think, we've been really exceptionally lucky with everybody at HBO Max and our studio Universal, where they really say, what do you want to do this season? What is the story? How do you want to tell it? And so it just felt like, we wanted to reestablish the world in the first episode, the relationships, the Vegas of it all. But then we really did want to get them on the road. It just felt exciting, and it is the thrust of the season. And so it also didn't feel like you wanted to see them on the road exponentially. It felt like that had a moment, and then once she actually figures out her new special and her new hour, it also, that does feel like, and I think this is true in real life, once you crack it and you got it, you're now it's still exciting. Let's get it on tape. Let's shoot this special. Let's get it before it kind of starts to get diminishing returns. And so it also felt like in the story, once she figures it out, you want her selling it, you want her back in LA, you want her shooting it. And there's a lot of fallout in her personal life from what that results in. And so it didn't feel, I think, design as much of the gang's in every episode and the gang's all here, because a lot of the gang is back in Vegas, a lot of the gang is back in LA. So in any case, that's how we approach season 2, which is different than season 1, and it's different than the season 3 that we're in production now.
Well, another aspect I love about the show is it's just 30 minutes, and I think in this era of streaming with no commercials, a lot of shows, they extend their runtime, comedy especially, they do an hour, or even 40 minutes. I think you've had some 36, 40 minutes, but mostly you guys stick to 30. And I think that also fits with the pacing and the timing. But you guys also accomplish a lot. There's a lot of intimate moments in the episodes, or even long scenes like Ava and Deborah's conversation in the cruise ship episode about sexuality. So have you guys ever, gotten notes from the studio or anybody about making an episode longer, or have you guys always been hard on no, we're going to stick to 30 minutes if we can?
The only episode, I'm going to expose them all. The only episode we really had serious conversations with the network was in season 1, actually, the second episode where the salt and pepper shaker and going out to the desert and the helicopter and all that. That was the only episode that we really had some serious conversations about cutting it down, and they felt that it was too long. In the end, we did cut a lot of time from it, but there had been discussions of like, should this be 2 episodes and all that. But in the end, we kept it as 1 episode. That was a little longer, one of our longer ones. But other than that one, and I think that was especially because it was the second episode of the first season. And I think people are still deciding, do I want to invest in the show? Do I like this show? And we didn't want people to feel like it was languid in any parts. So that's the only time I think that we ever really like had like other people talking to us about runtime. But otherwise, I will say, of the 3 of us, Paul, Jen, and I am the person who is the most like cut, try to keep it tight. But mostly I think because, all 3 of us, but come from like, Jen comes from also, she worked on Good Place and Parks and Rec, but Paul and I, for 5 seasons made Broad City, and Broad City is like 21 flat. You know what I mean? Like that is tight. You're talking taking out breaths here and there to make it really, really tight. And that also, I think there's a feeling there. And I think that there's just something that like feels more kinetic and more comedic and, about something that is tight. And so, that kind of background, I think, gives us a certain discipline when it comes to not being too, indulgent in a runtime. You still, I think the show isn't a Comedy Central show, and it does want to take some moments, like when Deborah's replacing her soda machine, like that's a 40-second scene with no dialogue, and so we do choose our moments to be patient. But a long runtime as a viewer, I feel it, and I'm like, oh god, how much longer is this episode? So yeah. I try
sure. Well, speaking of Good Place, the season 2 finale was directed by Trent O'Donnell. And I know that was also partially because you were pregnant, and Jean has talked about how you went into labor doing it during episode 9. So what were the logistics of planning the finale, knowing it was around your due date and calling in a guest director?
Yeah, because we knew that Paul also would not potentially be available.
Exactly.
So because he is the baby daddy, and he directs the majority of the episodes I don't direct. So yeah, I mean, I think Trent had worked with Jen before, and had worked with Morgan Sackett, one of our producers. And so, I think he felt like the right fit of somebody who was going to be very open about like, hey, here's how we view the show. This is because we are very exacting and we are very particular, which is why Paul and I direct, I think 90% of the episodes, is because we really feel like we know what this show is. And Trent was a great partner in coming on and being very open to like, hey, here's how we see it, and being like, great, I can execute that. And also, here's another great idea. And we're like, great, that's a great idea. And so he really was a fantastic collaborator. And also, of course, there's an incredible invention called Q-Take, which means that I can watch takes live on my phone anywhere. And so I was on Q-Take. I think I gave birth on a Friday and I was on Q-Take on Tuesday. So, I never
a lovely long maternity leave there.
Oh yeah. Hey, 72 hours is huge for me.
Yeah.
There's also like, now I feel like I had my first child, but I also have a child that is hacked. So I just really kind of had my second child.
Well, another thing about when you have a successful show, the next season, a lot of people want to be on it, like actors, and you had a lot of amazing guest stars this season: Laurie Metcalf, Ming Na, or my favorite, Devon Sawa.
Yeah.
So did you guys like get a lot of calls, like, from interested parties? And then when you were writing these new characters that she was meeting on the road, like, how do you decide, like, oh, we want to do, like, for lack of a better term, like stunt casting for it?
Yeah, it's really interesting because we are really thoughtful, I hope, about how we go along, how we think about that casting, is because we never want it to be such a celebrity that feels like it takes you out of the show. And so if we have somebody, for example, like Laurie Metcalf, I think what's amazing about her is she's such an incredible actor and is so funny that it felt like she fit into the Hacks world as this character. And I feel like when I watch it, I'm not like, oh gosh, that's Laurie Metcalf. I'm like, that is Weed, and she is insane, and she's complaining about mattresses in the mail, and I'm like, she's amazing. So we hope that we have that they are able to exist in our playground in a way that isn't distracting, but is only additive. And sometimes we write towards certain people because maybe we've heard that they like the show, and then sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they say no. And then sometimes we write without having any idea if they like the show, like Lori, and we wrote that part for her, and she luckily had a relationship with Linda Lowy, who was our casting director at HBO Max, and she said, hey, listen, there's this part, it says, think Laurie Metcalf, would you be interested? And she said, well, let me read it. And that's how that happened. So sometimes there's just like, the universe says, here you go, sweetie. And other times, like somebody like Devin Sawa, like that, we didn't write that part for anybody in particular. And he read for it and was so fantastic. And, that was just a kind of more typical casting route. So yeah, it really can happen in any way. And we have some really great guests also in season 3, and in ways that I think are going to be surprising. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, what can you tell us about season 3? Paul has already said there's a 1-year time jump.
Yes, there is a 1-year time jump. And what else can I say? I'll say, I guess that Deborah, because of the success of the special, which is how we left the last episode of season 2, the success of the special has given her newfound relevance, cultural cachet. And she's more famous than she has been in a really, really long time. And, I think she did something kind in a lot of ways. And also in a way that is, I think, protective in letting Ava go. But I think the newfound relevance kind of throws that into question, whether or not she feels like she really can be without her.
Mm-hmm. And how's Ava striking out on her own?
She's doing great. She's actually doing fantastically well as well.
Okay. And my faves, Jimmy and Kayla.
Oh, they're there, sweetie. Jimmy and Kayla, well, they've struck out on their own, as we know from the finale.
They have their own firm now. They're good.
They do have their own firm. Yes, they are starting their own little operation, and they like keeping it nimble, or so they think.
Nice. Well, I can't wait to see it. Lucia, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you back in a little bit.
As always. Okay, bye.
Thank you.